This is not the silence he's used to. It's not the kind of stillness where she hopes he'll return. This time, she's gone inside herself. And that shift, that sacred retreat, is the final test he never prepared for. He thought she'd always be there. He mistook her softness for weakness. He relied on her energy to hold both of them. But now, she's not holding anything for him. She's holding herself, her mission, her light. And in doing that, she's reflecting everything he's been avoiding. This isn't just a turning point. It's an initiation. The divine feminine is no longer waiting for the masculine to wake up. She is the wake-up. Her detachment becomes his collapse. Her peace becomes his discomfort. Her power becomes the mirror that shatters his false identity. Because the closer union gets, the more the old ego must die, and now, he must face the most painful realization of all. She doesn't need him anymore. And that is what will break him open. You may think the separation was the hardest part. The sleepless nights, the ghosting, the waiting, the ache of loving someone who didn't love you the same way, or so it seemed. But the real test? It's happening now. Not in loud ways, but in the quiet power of what you've stopped doing. You've stopped chasing. You've stopped fixing. You've stopped holding his process on your back like a soul mule for two timelines. And in that stillness, something has shifted in the field. This is the part no one warns you about. The final test for the divine feminine doesn't come when he's gone. It comes when you no longer abandon yourself in hopes of his return. And make no mistake, he feels it. It's not just that you're moving on. It's that your energy is no longer available for his unawakened self to feed on. The emotional nourishment that once kept him afloat, your endless compassion, your unconditional holding, your soft waiting, has been reclaimed. And now, your frequency is no longer his mirror. It's yours. He's been used to testing you, seeing how far you'll bend, how long you'll stay, what parts of yourself you'll sacrifice to stay close to him. But now, the roles have reversed. Because the feminine rising is not loud, it's not violent, it's not dramatic, it's sovereign. And that kind of silent power is the one thing his ego cannot survive. This test isn't about punishing him. It's about honoring you. You've been loyal to a soul bond that most can't even understand. You've cried on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., clutching your chest while a man you couldn't explain still lived in your field. You've defended his spirit while his actions tore you down. You've protected his potential while neglecting your present. But now, you've changed. And that's what begins the unraveling of everything he built to protect himself from you. The real you, the one who doesn't ask for permission to shine. The one who no longer waits to be chosen. The one who knows she already is the union she longed for. This energy, it terrifies him. Because for the first time, you're no longer a mirror for his comfort. You're the reflection of what he's not becoming fast enough. And that reflection breaks the spell. He begins to feel it not just emotionally, but physically. He can't sleep the same. His distractions don't distract. His karmic loops feel thinner. Nothing fills the space the way your energy once did, because that energy was never just love. It was divine recognition, and it's gone. Not in bitterness, not in anger, but in evolution. You've elevated, and in doing so, You've become the test he cannot cheat. He must now rise, not to win you back, but to become the version of himself he pretended he already was. And this is where the final test of the feminine becomes the final cracking of the masculine. Because if he stays the same, he loses you forever. Not because you punish, but because you ascend. This is the sacred space where love stops begging, where energy no longer leaks through your boundaries, where you don't carry the connection, you honor it, and you place it on the altar where it belongs. He's being tested now. In the silence you left behind, in the choices you stopped making for him, in the version of yourself he no longer has access to. And this isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Because the divine feminine never needed to prove her love. She needed to embody it. And now that you are, the test has already begun. He was prepared for your tears. He was familiar with your chasing, your holding on, your attempts to mend what he refused to name. He knew the rhythm of your heart when it ached for him, and he fed on it silently, pretending not to notice. He depended on your chaos, because as long as you were reacting, he could avoid reflecting. But this version of you, this silence, this sacred stillness, he doesn't know what to do with it. And that's exactly where the unraveling begins. You see, when the divine feminine finally stops reaching out, not from ego, but from alignment, something irreversible happens in the masculine's field. He can no longer identify himself as the one being chased or the one in control. His sense of power crumbles because it was never true power. It was borrowed power, borrowed from your devotion, from your willingness to carry both paths, from your softness. But now you've gone still, not cold, still. And that's far more powerful. Stillness doesn't seek validation. It radiates certainty. Stillness doesn't plead for love. It becomes it. Stillness isn't the absence of care. It's the presence of self. And when a woman like you goes still, the masculine is forced to face himself without your energy buffering his self-deception. The illusions he built begin to collapse, not because you expose them, but because your absence no longer holds space for them. He begins to question everything. Was she ever really mine? Why do I feel emptier now that she's not reaching for me? Why does the silence echo louder than her voice ever did? These aren't just thoughts. They're soul fractures. His identity, the one that leaned on your constancy, starts to dissolve. He can't call you too emotional anymore because you're no longer reacting. He can't call you too available because you're no longer accessible. He can't call you too much because now you're nowhere. And the irony? He wanted this freedom. He created this distance, but now that it's real, he feels naked in it. Because when your energy retreats, his truth is exposed. Not the truth he shows the world, but the inner truth he buried under roles, masks, and half-lived relationships. He realizes that your presence was never the threat. Your presence was the mirror. And now that the mirror is gone, he's seeing what's been missing all along: his own soul. You never asked him to be perfect. You never needed him to be healed. You just needed him to be honest, to meet you, to see you. But he couldn't. not while you were still doing the seeing for both of you. And now that you've stepped back, he has to see for himself. That's what shatters him. Not your anger, not your goodbye, but your peace. Because peace means you're not trying to convince him anymore. Peace means you've stopped explaining your worth. Peace means you've remembered who you are without him. And that's what breaks his ego. Your stillness becomes the frequency he can't ignore. It vibrates through his karmic attachments. It shakes the foundations of every false identity he's clung to. It whispers into his denial, louder than your words ever did. Because your silence is not void. It's reflection. It's a portal. And while he may not speak it, he feels it in his sleep, in his chest, in the space you used to occupy, now filled with everything he never faced. This is the initiation, not into punishment, but into presence. If he wants to meet you again, he must meet himself first, not the self he pretended to be for love, but the self who can hold it. Because the version of you that loved him in lack is gone. And the version of him that once fed on that is dying too. So don't mistake his silence now as indifference. It's paralysis. It's identity collapse. It's the breakdown that births a man. Your stillness was never a goodbye. It was a mirror. And he is finally looking. Why his ego can't survive her new energy. There's a shift that happens in the divine feminine when she stops performing love and starts embodying it. It's subtle on the outside, but to the masculine it feels like an earthquake. Because everything he built in his mind about who she was and what she would always do starts to crumble in the light of her new frequency. She's no longer begging to be seen. She's no longer bending to be accepted. She's no longer bleeding to prove that her love is worthy of staying. She's become sovereign. And his ego doesn't know how to survive in that atmosphere. You see, the ego survives on reactions. It feeds on drama, control, and the familiar loop of push and pull. It thrives when it knows how to manipulate emotions, when it can predict the outcome, when it can use your own longing against you. But when you go silent, not out of pain, but out of power, the ego begins to starve. He can't play the same games anymore because you've stopped playing altogether. And here's what makes this even more intense for him. He doesn't fully understand why it's affecting him so deeply. But his soul does. His higher self feels the separation from what once felt like control, and it realizes the truth. The divine feminine doesn't orbit around his delays anymore. She's stepped into a field he can't enter with his old identity. And if he doesn't shed it, he'll be left behind. That's why his ego is in crisis. This new energy of yours, grounded, radiant, unbothered, shines a light on everything he pretended to be. It exposes his emotional immaturity. It reveals the gaps in his masculine foundation. It brings him face to face with a version of himself that was only surviving by hiding behind your nurturing. And now that you're no longer holding that space for him, he must either rise or retreat. But rising means ego death. And ego death isn't poetic, it's brutal, it's confusing, it's the unraveling of every mask, every excuse, every identity that made him feel safe, but never truly loved. He starts to notice the imbalance, that he took without offering, that he received your presence while withholding his own, that he felt powerful in the relationship, not because he showed up, but because you always did. And now you're gone from that role. You still exist, you still love, but you're no longer carrying. That distinction is what his ego can't digest. Because your energy used to give him false life. It gave him illusionary power. It made him feel chosen without choosing himself. It made him feel desired without doing the inner work to become emotionally available. Now, your presence is no longer a gift he receives passively. It's a mirror that demands engagement. And for the masculine stuck in ego, that's terrifying. It's terrifying to realize he never had your soul, only your sacrifice. It's terrifying to realize you loved him beyond his worthiness, and now you've returned to loving yourself in that same way. It's terrifying to feel the magnetic pull of you and know that it's no longer accessible through charm, sex, or delay. Because now, your field is sealed. Only truth gets in. Only integrity gets close. Only devotion survives. He may try to resist. He may double down on his distractions. He may seek temporary connections to numb the wound. But nothing sticks because his body remembers you, not the version that chased, but the version that turned inward and glowed. That glow haunts his ego, not because it hurts him, but because it dissolves him. This is where the real inner battle begins. His soul is whispering, she's not coming back to the old cycle. But his ego is screaming, then who am I without her attention? And that's the moment everything fractures. Because attention was never love, control was never connection, and your patience was never permission. You've changed the rules, not through revenge, through remembrance. And he can't fake his way into your energy anymore, because this version of you no longer sees him through wounds. She sees him through truth. And in that truth, only his real self can survive. So if he wants to reach you again, he has to shed every mask, face every fear, kill every illusion that kept him emotionally safe, but spiritually empty. That's why his ego is shaking, because it knows she's not waiting, she's not weakening, she's awakening. And if he doesn't awaken too, he'll lose her to the very love she finally gave herself. He always thought he had time to figure himself out, time to stay silent, time to disappear and return when it felt right. But something about her has shifted, and this time, the clock has stopped ticking. Because the feminine isn't waiting anymore, not in bitterness, not in rebellion, but in full sacred clarity. She's no longer waiting for him to get it. She's no longer holding the door open while freezing in the wind of his indecision. She's no longer extending grace at the cost of her glow. And that shift, though silent, is loud in the spiritual realm. Because the moment the feminine stops waiting, the entire dynamic changes. He can feel it in his body, even if his mind doesn't understand. There's an emptiness where her energy used to wrap around his. There's a stillness where her prayers used to protect him. He doesn't hear her calling anymore. He doesn't feel her hoping anymore. And strangely, he realizes he misses being felt. She used to carry both of them in her frequency. When he was numb, she was present. When he was blind, she was the seer. When he ran, she stood still, believing in his return. But now she's not waiting for him to rise. She's rising without him. And that rising is deafening. Because waiting kept part of her bound to his timeline. It made her adjust her light to not scare him. It made her shrink her pace so he could catch up. Now that she's stopped, she's faster, clearer, lighter. She's accessing codes he hasn't even begun to understand. She's aligning with timelines that his ego can't reach. And the version of him that she once loved, she's already surpassed him spiritually. This is where the pain begins for the masculine. Because now, he sees her not as his, but as the version of love that slipped through his fingers while he hesitated. And that realization is cruel to the ego. He remembers every moment she tried, every message she sent, every energetic hug she offered in his darkest nights. He recalls her softness, her holding, her hope. But now he sees something else. She's in love with her own becoming. And he's no longer the center of her gravity. That loss, the loss of her energetic attention, hurts deeper than physical separation ever did. Because the masculine was always secretly nourished by her waiting. It made him feel safe. It made him feel chosen, even when he didn't choose back. It gave him the illusion that no matter what, she'd still be there. But now he feels what she felt, the loneliness of not being met, the ache of being unseen, the weight of one-sided connection. Except now, he's the one on the outside, and she's not reaching back. That's what changes everything. Because her silence isn't cold, it's sacred. Her absence isn't punishment, it's protection. She's no longer available for emotional breadcrumbs. She's not interested in half-awakened love. She's not here to heal him anymore. She's here to hold herself. And if he can't match that frequency, he's not getting access. This is the moment the masculine starts to question himself, not just about her, but about him. What did he avoid? What emotions did he suppress? What mask was he hiding behind when she offered him the real thing? And here's the truth. She was always real. He just wasn't ready. But now she's not waiting for readiness. She's moving into resonance. He'll feel the difference. In his sleep, in his solitude, in the echoes of his heart, where her presence used to be. And one day, when he looks for her in another body, in another moment, he'll realize something brutal. She didn't disappear. She just stopped waiting and started living. And unless he steps out of the waiting room of his own fears, he won't find her again, because waiting is over. The feminine is no longer circling the past. She's becoming the future, and it's a future his ego can't enter. Only his soul can. But the soul doesn't walk through open doors. It breaks through the old self to meet the truth face to face. And right now, she is that truth. Unapologetically, unshakably, unreachable, unless he rises. Because she's not waiting, she's walking ahead, and for the first time, he must follow. This is the moment the divine masculine never thought would come. Not because she didn't try, but because she always chose him. In every cycle, in every silence, in every separation, even when it broke her, she picked him again. Not out of weakness, but out of spiritual memory, out of soul loyalty, out of the ache that whispered, "He is part of me." But now, she remembers something deeper. She is whole, with or without him. And that remembrance changes everything. Because the feminine has reached the place beyond waiting, beyond hoping, beyond trying to be the one who always understands. She has stopped explaining her love. She has stopped bleeding her truth in the name of divine timing. She has stopped betraying her peace to hold space for a version of him that still refuses to rise. She's not angry. She's not punishing. She's simply choosing herself. And that choice isn't a reaction, it's a revolution. She now understands that choosing herself doesn't mean she's abandoning him. It means she's anchoring her frequency in such truth that only those who match it can walk beside her. And his ego? It feels the shift, because when she chose him above herself, he felt safe. He knew she would soften, bend, wait, forgive, again and again. He counted on that sacred reflex in her. But now, something else lives in her gaze. Not distance, but sovereignty. He sees it, he feels it, and suddenly the feminine isn't just the mirror of love. She's the mirror of everything he's yet to face in himself. Because her choice to stop making him her first choice reveals every place inside him where he's never truly chosen himself either. It shakes him. He realizes he never had control over her love. It wasn't a contract, it wasn't a guarantee, it was a sacred offering. And now, the offering is gone. Not withdrawn in bitterness, but reclaimed in truth. She's not proving her worth anymore. She's embodying it. She's not seeking reunion through his change. She's realizing the reunion begins when she stops abandoning herself. This is the true initiation. Because the feminine who chooses herself first isn't the same woman he left behind. She no longer waits for his message to feel seen. She no longer prays for signs to believe she matters. She no longer holds his potential as her mission. She is her own alignment now. And when the masculine feels that, he doesn't just miss her. He misses who he could have been if he had chosen to. Because while she was busy loving him, she forgot to love the parts of herself that were still healing. But now, she's tending to those wounds. She's holding her inner child. She's reawakening the fire she dimmed. She's remembering her divine role, not as the one who saves, but as the one who leads. And that leadership doesn't chase, it magnetizes. She doesn't knock on doors anymore. She opens gates, and only those in resonance can cross. This is not about punishing the masculine. It's about freeing both of them from the illusion that love requires suffering. It doesn't. It requires wholeness. And she's finally choosing to embody hers. So what happens now? He stands at the edge of himself. He sees her glow. From a distance, he hears the echo of the old her, the one who waited, but can't find her anymore. She's not there. She's ahead, alive, awake, unshaken by his delays, and maybe for the first time, he realizes she's not doing this to him. She's doing it for herself. And in that sacred choice, she's doing it for both of them. Because the real feminine doesn't wait for a man to become divine. She becomes divine and lets the universe decide who can walk beside her in that truth. And if he's meant to rise, he will. But until then, she chooses herself. And that choice is what shatters timelines, kills the ego, births new unions. Because she's not here to be chosen. She is the choice. There's a silence after awakening. Not the silence of distance, but the silence of clarity. The divine feminine has reached that place. She no longer craves signs. She no longer waits for permission from the universe. She no longer aches in cycles, trying to decipher his shadows. Because she finally sees what was hidden behind every spiritual lesson, every emotional spiral, every soul bond that felt like fire and fog at once. It was never about being chosen. It was always about remembering that she was never not the one. And that remembrance dissolves everything the ego tried to hold. Because the illusions must die. The illusion that love means suffering. The illusion that she must carry the connection for both. The illusion that she needs to be broken first to be whole. The illusion that if she heals enough, sacrifices enough, softens enough, he will finally return. All of it gone. In its place, there is something quieter, but infinitely stronger. She is no longer seeking union from lack. She is not performing divinity to be worthy of it. She is divine. She always was, and now that she sees it, nothing can remain the same. This is what the masculine never understood fully. That the feminine's love wasn't eternal by obligation. It was eternal by grace. And grace cannot be manipulated. She gave it freely. And now, she releases it just as freely, not to sever, but to liberate. Because the moment of reunion is sacred, and only truth can survive it. He cannot meet her carrying illusions. He cannot enter the new timeline with the same armor. He cannot touch the frequency she holds if he's still worshiping control. So now the universe does something bold. It allows her to walk ahead, not as a punishment to him, but as a final mirror. She moves not to disappear, but to reveal. And if he looks closely, he'll see she never stopped being his mirror. She just stopped reflecting his comfort. And that shift is what ends the illusion. Because what truly breaks the masculine's ego is not her leaving. It's her becoming. She becomes the vision she used to dim. She becomes the clarity she once buried under love. She becomes the embodiment of wholeness that no longer makes him her center. Because she has become her own universe. And the moment she steps into that frequency, union becomes possible, not guaranteed, but finally possible. Because now, there's no one to chase, no wound to fix, no timeline to force, just two energies, whole, awake, aligned by choice, not karma. So let the old versions fall away. Let the illusions dissolve into silence. Let the pain that once defined you return to source, because it served its purpose. And what is that purpose? To bring you back to you. To show you that you were never meant to wait. You were meant to rise, to burn, to remember, to lead. And if he follows, truly follows, it will be because his ego has died too. Because real union doesn't happen in illusion. It happens in truth. So if your body feels stillness now, trust it. If your soul feels like it's shedding something heavy, let it. If you feel that strange sense of peace, you've arrived. The illusions are dying. And that death is sacred. Because what rises from it isn't just reunion. It's you. Reborn. Untouched by fear. Unafraid of love. Unshaken by who does or doesn't meet you. Because now you know. The illusion had to die, so you could live in your light. And from that light, if he's meant to return, he will rise to meet you. Not from a place of ego, but from soul. And if he doesn't, you're still whole. Union was never the reward. You are.